Hey guys, I'm Festival Pirate, and in this hopefully relatively short video I'm going to be going over how I learned to draw a box. As some of you may know, I am currently on a journey to create a portfolio to be able to go and study games art at a university, and I started this, and to start that off I decided to complete lesson 1 of drawabox as well as to get through Mark Brunet's 30 days of learning how to draw challenge thing, and and so I wanted to go over the drawabox portion of that today. I managed to get the whole of drawabox apart from the 250 boxes completed in January, which I'm quite happy with. I think that went pretty well, and I also got a good chunk of the 30 days done and some other art as well. So I think January was a pretty good month for me. February is going pretty darn well as well, to be fair. So so I wanted to go over all that. So let's get started. I have a bunch of pages because I did all of the exercises and everything on just loose sheets of printer paper. The first few lessons I went and did with the Staedtler pigment liner 0.5, and then for the rest of that I just used a Sharpie ultra fine point marker, permanent marker, because the Sharpie ones were £2 I think for 2 or something like that. They were very cheap. I actually found recently that I found a very old sketchbook, and it turns out that I had actually gone through and completed all of lesson 1 including the 250 box challenge a couple of years earlier, which was quite interesting. I'd completely forgotten about it. I think that this time around I gave it a better shot, because last time everything seemed quite squished and small, and I was just doing my best to get through it rather than doing that much. And then also I took notes last time, so I don't really know what was going on back then. But so the very first page that I filled for this was just scribbles. I don't even know if I'm going to show that, but it was basically just a page of scribbles, basically just figuring out what it's like to draw from your wrist, from your elbow, from your shoulder, just a bunch of short quick marks, getting used to drawing with a pen, because as I said in the short that started all of this, I haven't really drawn anything in over a year. So I all of this, that's honestly the reason I wanted to do drawabox, because I felt it wouldn't put much pressure on me to get a full illustration done, or get be good at anatomy, or know how to draw poses and all that. It would just help me figure out how to use a pen to get lines, and to be able to control those lines so that they look okay and that they did what I wanted them to do. So that's why I decided to do the whole lesson 1. I don't think I'm going to be continuing with drawabox, just because I don't really care about being the best at anatomy or I don't know, fossils or cars or whatever it is that the rest of the lessons do. I'm just not that interested. I feel I have already achieved what I set out and wanted to achieve via doing drawabox, and that was to get more confident at lines and to be able to get those lines across in a decent fashion. And I think that I've got that. I can actually draw circles now pretty well. I know how to actually draw a box from scratch without rulers or anything, and I know how to. I'm pretty decent at making sure that if I have 2 dots on the page, I can get a straight line drawn that connects those 2 points and doesn't wander off somewhere. So my personal goal has been completed and achieved, but of what I want to achieve through drawabox. I definitely do recommend drawabox, especially if you haven't drawn anything in a long time and are trying to get in, or you're a fresh artist who's never drawn anything, because I do think it's really good for those very fundamentals of knowing how to control your hand whilst drawing. I think that, so that was page 1. That was the first page I did, and then the next 2 pages that I did were just a bunch of short and long lines as well as a few curves, just trying to get them all. I think it was trying to get them all to be roughly in the same place. So the first exercise was called the superimposed lines, and it was to gain confidence in drawing straight lines and doing your best to make all of your lines the same and on top of each other, so that there's not much fraying or whatever. These were the first things I did for this, apart from that scribble page, which doesn't really count as an actual exercise. It was just exploration more so rather than actual lines. I think that my first page, the short lines, are definitely worse than on the second page, at least the very short ones. But I think overall, I think it went pretty decently because it was meant to just help gain that confidence in drawing lines. And I think it turned out okay. Like, it's not perfect. I could definitely do a better job this time around, but I think it went pretty decently. I think it achieved the point of that exercise, and yeah, I don't really have much more to say about that. The second exercise was to draw a bunch of dots. What was it called? It was called the ghosted lines exercise. Basically, just draw a bunch of dots and connect them. And again, I could definitely do a much better job this time around, now that I have had like a month or 2 months of like drawing experience, I guess. But honestly, they like most of them did not reach like dot to dot or like surpassed it or like fade off or whatever, but they are straight lines. Pretty much all of them are straight lines, so that is good. And yeah, I mean, I don't think they turned out that bad. So yeah, the next thing was the ghosted planes exercise, which basically was just the same as the last thing, except that the dots formed boxes or like squares or like deformed squares or whatever, planes. Basically, they formed planes that had like 4 points, and you had to connect all of the dots in that plane and make sort of like square thingies. And do I have a photo of that, or did I scan it afterwards? So I don't have a image of what that looks like. I have 2 images of what it looks like later on, because I did like the exercises did then have us later on going back in and drawing circles within all of these planes, and I have an image of that. I don't have an image of what it looks like before the ellipses were added. But I enjoyed this actually quite a bit. This was fun. Like, it took ages. It took quite a bit of time, but I did enjoy making this. I might like use this as like a warm-up exercise in the future, because I tend to do warm-ups now, which I've never done in the past when I drew, but actually it's quite helpful, and I enjoyed doing like little warm-ups. So yeah, so that was that, and then I think that's the last of these, and then we went into circles or like ellipses. How do you pronounce that?
Ellipses. Ellipses.
Ellipses. Ellipses.
Ellipses.
I don't make that. Anyway, that was all of the lines, and then we went into ellipses. So the first thing that I did for the ellipses was just to draw a whole page of circles, basically just like different like circles, ovals, whatever, just to get a hang of drawing those. And most of these honestly turned out pretty darn well. I'm quite happy with them. It was just like to get my hands used to drawing circles, and I think it was a good idea to do that, because like the table of ellipses, whilst quite good, I think that it's too small and like constrained and everything for me to have like been able to go into that straight away without having filled up a page with all of these circles. So I'm glad I did do that. And then the first exercise for the ellipses were just 2 pages of tables of ellipses. Yeah, again, definitely could do a better job this time around, but I think it was good. Nothing much really for me to say, to be honest. It was fun. I did enjoy it. It was enjoyable. So then after those tables, we did the ellipses in planes, which was basically taking those planes that we'd drawn earlier. So we took those 2 pages of planes that we'd drawn earlier and filled them with circles, and it was probably the hardest exercise till now, because I didn't have as much control on what the shape of the ellipses could be, and I had to do my best to fit them within all of these planes. So it was definitely a good exercise. Probably would be good to also do this as a warm-up at some point, or maybe when I'm doing like more complex structural things involving circles and stuff. And for most of these, I did either like not quite reach the sides or went over, but you know, we were just starting out with drawing after a year or so. So I think yeah, it did what it did. I think it's fine. So then the next exercise was the funnels exercise, which was probably the most boring, honestly. I did not really enjoy it. It was boring to me. Probably why it looks the worst out of all of these in my opinion. So those were all of the ellipses. So then after that we did boxes. So the first exercise of the boxes was the plotted perspective exercise, which was basically learning more about perspective and how it works. And I'm quite happy with how it turned out, because it honestly, in my opinion, and my mum's as well, so to be fair, so it's not just me, it looks sort of like a some sort of architectural model, like a building or something, and it looks quite cool. So definitely a bit messy because there's quite a few boxes on there. Not all of them were perfect, but it was a good exercise to like sort of figure out what boxes in perspective are meant to look like. And I got to do all of this with a ruler, so that meant I didn't have to do it by hand, which made it relatively like a lot quicker to get it done. And yeah, so then the next exercise that I did was the rough perspective exercise. So this, like the last time we got to reuse rulers or like a ruler to make sure that all of our boxes were in perspective, to like figure out what it looks like when a box is in perspective and whatnot. But then this time around we had to do everything by hand, and we couldn't use a ruler to make sure that everything was in perspective. So it was a lot harder because we had to measure everything ourselves by eye and like by using like ghosted lines and everything. And yeah, none of these are perfect. I did get quite a few of these boxes are pretty on point. Like I'd say probably like 50% or so of them are on point, then the other 50% are off. But it was a good attempt, and it's not like in like actual practice, like when I'm drawing my art and whatnot just by myself, I'm not gonna have a ruler available to me. So like, you know, it doesn't really matter that much whether or not this exercise came out that well, because yeah, I mean in like actual practice I'm gonna have a ruler and like perspective guides and whatnot to be able to like reference. So you know, yeah. So we did 2 pages of that, and then we went on and did the rotated boxes, which was probably my favorite exercise because it was just so fun. It was just like drawing a bunch of boxes in a spherical shape basically, and I don't know, yeah, I just thought it was fun. I enjoyed it a lot. I think it turned out okay. Like there's definitely issues with a lot of these boxes, but I was still just, at this point, yeah, I hadn't actually figured out a real way just yet to draw boxes that well, but I was working on it, and I was getting better and better at drawing those boxes. And this here in this exercise, that the idea started to form of like how I should be drawing boxes and how that should go. And overall I think it went pretty decent. Like yeah, there's issues of course, but overall not bad. Could be significantly worse, and definitely fun exercise that I will also be doing as a warm-up. Probably not all at once because it did take like, I don't know, like ages, but you know, I can do like part here, part there, like as little warm-ups before I start digging to the actual art I'm doing that day. But yeah, and then is this the final? Yeah, and then the final exercise that we did was the organic perspective one, which basically was just like drawing a squiggly line and then plotting a bunch of boxes on top of it to make them look like some of them are closer to you, some of them are further away. So the ones closer to you are larger, the ones further away are smaller, and then just like random boxes, doesn't really matter in what like position they were in. But yeah, again, I did enjoy this. There are still mistakes, but this is the exercise where I actually started, like where I figured out how to actually draw a box, at least without like the other side of it, being able to see through it, but being able to see the front sides of it. This is where I figured that out, and that has helped me a lot, especially with the 250 boxes challenge, and I will be showing how to draw that at the end of this video. So hopefully that will help you guys with drawing your own boxes. Yeah, so that's this exercise. Quite fun. It was fun to draw a bunch of boxes. These the ones closer to you larger, the ones further away smaller, like kind of squiggly line, figuring out what, like which box should go where, the shading on that box and all that. And yeah, and then the final thing that we have from Drawabox is the 250 box challenge, which I have not completed yet. I've done, I think, like 50 boxes of that probably. I don't think I will be sharing like the final thing of that with you guys because it's going to take ages, and I'm just going to be getting it done and like as like basically just warm-ups before like I actually start the art for that day, that sort of thing. So I don't think, maybe I'll share the final thing as like an image on somewhere, so you guys can see how it went for me. And as I said, I don't think I'm going to be continuing with drawabox because I feel like I have already achieved what I wanted to from this. I definitely do recommend you guys check it out and like have a look, and because especially for like beginner artists or someone who hasn't drawn in a long time, I think it can help a lot with just being able to like plot down those lines that you want. So yeah, I think that's it for drawabox itself. So now I will show you guys how to actually draw a box. So the way that I go about drawing a box is I start out by putting down 3 points roughly in the shape of a triangle, and then I put down a 4th point roughly in the center of that. So I do my best for all of these angles to be roughly 120 degrees. They don't have to be perfect. Sometimes the dot ends up being here, well, not here, but like sometimes the dot ends up being here, sometimes it ends up being more like here. But I always do my best so that it's as centered as I can get it, because it makes the process of drawing the box a lot simpler. Then what I do is connect all of these exterior dots with this dot in the center. This ends up making all of the lines that are like the closest to us. So from here, what we could do is we could draw parallel lines. So we could take this line and move it over here, and then we could do the same thing with this line and move it over here like this. And so then we would have a perfectly parallel plane over here. The box that we're drawing is going to be in perspective. So this point over here is the closest to us. These 3 points are all further away. And so if we were to make all of these lines, so these exterior lines, parallel to the interior lines, it wouldn't be in perspective, because if we were to then extend these lines, they would always be parallel rather than converging towards a point, which is what they should do in perspective. So the way that I combat that, we take these lines and we do our best to draw them in parallel all the way until they touch this point here, doing our best to make them roughly the same length. They're not going to necessarily be perfect, but that's okay. So we've done that with this line, then we're going to take this line and also do our best to make it parallel and put another dot roughly there. And so then we have these 2 dots here. Then draw an imaginary line between this point here and the center of these 2 dots. So something like this, and then along this line we will plot another dot. So what I'm just going to quickly do is plot all of the points, and then I will come back to you and show you what that looks like. Okay, so we've got all of these dots put down. All of these center dots are on a line that roughly goes from between these two to directly to this one. Yeah, as you can see, roughly on those lines. So next what we can do is erase these because we don't need them anymore. So the next thing that we're going to do is connect these dots to these dots, right? Sort of like this. So we've connected all of those dots together and we now have a box. Is it perfect? Probably not, but for some of drawabox this would be enough. However, for the 250 box challenge, for example, it's not. What we're going to have to add is the back side or the interior of the box as well, so that you can actually see through the box. So what I do for that is honestly very similar to what we've done so far. We're going to just put down more points and then connect what's in between them. So we have this line here. We're going to move it over here like this. The point will roughly be there. So then that makes a plane in there. What we'll do next is grab this line, move it so that it's roughly probably going to be something like this. So that makes another plane. The point goes there. So another plane. And then we move this line, plot it roughly there. We'll make another point there, and then this line will go somewhere here, make another point there, and you'll have a bunch of points in the center there. Now, I always find doing the insides to be the most difficult because, for example, sometimes we'll be lucky and the dots will look something like this, and then these two go together, these two go together, so we know that the central points are roughly there and there. We can draw a line, and then the central point of that is there, and then that makes it super easy to just connect with the points. However, here that is sadly not the case, and so the way that I'd go about it here is I can see that this point, so that it converges towards the center point, would be going somewhere along this line, and then the other points don't matter quite as much. However, we can see that this line goes like this, so this would probably go somewhere along that line, similarly with the other side. So the way I'd go about it here is probably something like this. So the center central points are roughly there. So then I would put the dot here. Is it going to be perfect? No, but that's just how I would go about doing it. Sometimes it's going to work out, sometimes it's not, but it's always going to look roughly like a box, which, you know, that's all we can hope for at this point. So yeah, we can get rid of all of this because we don't need it anymore. So we've got this dot in the center here. What we're going to do now is, what we need to do is connect to the central dot with the lines there, there, and there, and then that will form a box. Your lines are probably not going to always be perfect, but that's fine. We're doing our best, and that's what matters. So here we have our box. Looking at it like this, it's not great because we don't really know whether this is the front side of the box, this is the front side, maybe it goes something like that, or maybe this. So it's a little bit confusing for our eye. So what I do from here is grab my ruler, make my lines slightly diagonal, and then I will just go over, and because as you can see the central dot is on like this plane, is displayed via this plane here. So this is the plane I will put my lines on, and this is going to be the plane that's closest, that displays as being like the closest to us. And putting lines will just help the box look more like a actual box. It just helps our eye to know what exactly we're looking at and how this is meant to go. So as you can see here, that helps this to just look more like a box, and we know that this is the side that's closest to us. These sides are further away. These lines are like on the other side, so we don't really, our eyes don't really need to pay attention to them. And yeah, and that is how I draw boxes. If you guys have any tips on how you draw boxes, or any ways to like improve the method, or any methods that you guys have, I would gladly hear about them. But yeah, that's how I draw a box. So thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, maybe like, comment, subscribe. Let me know if you're following an art plan, or whether you'd like me to have a look at any sort of art plan, and I will see you in the next video. Okay, bye.